Nectar of Instruction, verse 1. Vacho veham manasakroda veham Shiva veham udarapasta veham Etam vehan yo visaita dira Sarvam abhiman pritivin nasisyat. A sober person can tolerate the urge to speak, the mind's demands, the action of anger, and the urges of the tongue, belly, and genitals, is qualified to make disciples all over the world. We will now try to understand this verse more deeply based on verses of the Bhagavad Gita. Why is it important that we have to tolerate the urge to speak, the mind's demands and anger and so on? Because if these urges brings us in a mode of passion and ignorance and makes us becoming absorbed in the duality of this world. What is good for the body, what is bad for the body. And we forget becoming absorbed in bodily identification. We forget the needs of the soul, what's good for the soul, what's bad for the soul. And we become entangled in material existence. So we can become Krishna conscious when we become freed from this duality. Because this duality prevents us to fix our mind on Krishna, because when it's absorbed in the duality of this world in good and bad, then we identify with the body and we think of things in this world and we cannot think of Krishna. Bhagavad Gita 7:28 says, Yesam tvantratam papam chananam punya karmanam Detvantva nirmukta bhajanti mam dritavataha. Those who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. Those whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, we must stop sinful actions. Sinful actions are described in Bhagavad Gita that Krishna says that they are born of the mode of passion, that and as long one acts in the mode of passion and ignorance, then one cannot come out of this duality. That because this duality is born of the mode of passion and ignorance. And it's Avitam Jnanam Etina, it covers our intelligence and it brings us in this duality of good and bad. But how is this duality manifested in our lives? Lord Krishna in 334 Bhagavad Gita says there are two paripantina, stumbling blocks. Raga, attachment, and Dvesha is aversion. If the mind is absorbed in attachment, means we want to enjoy what gives pleasure to the body we are attached to. What gives pain we don't want. And conditioned life means trying to give more pleasure, that in creating attachment to this pleasure and trying to give up the suffering. We are averse to that. And that's a duality. This duality factually is this duality is an concoction of the mind. There is an old Chinese story that says that a man, a farmer, he had a beautiful horse. He was living in a village, and one day his horse ran away, and all the villagers were saying, "That is bad, very bad. Now he lost his horse. With his horse he could walk on the land so many things, and now he lost his horse is bad." 3 days later, the horse came back together with two other wild horses. And when the villagers heard that, they said, "That's good. Now he has 3 horses. That's very good." Then the son of the farmer was trying to tame the horses. And while he was taming the horses, these two wild horses who came with the other horse, he broke his leg. And all the all the villagers said, "That's bad. Now his son has broken his leg. That he cannot do any work anymore. That's very bad." A few days later, a representative of the emperor came into the village to draft young men into the army of the emperor. And this representative of the emperor came to the house of the farmer, and he said, "Yeah, we cannot engage your son in the army with this broken leg, so it's not possible." So all the villagers said, "That's very good. Then he doesn't have to go to the army." So each time, in a short span of time, what was bad became good, what became good became bad. That it's an invention of the mind. It's only for the body. All this good and bad, when we are out of the body, there's no meaning. There's no meaning to our real self, the soul. That. Therefore, we must control this attachment and aversion, and therefore we have to control our senses, mind, senses, and these urges, especially which comes from the mind. So we have first to control the mind, because Bhagavad Gita 33:37 speaks about the greatest enemy, Vairinam. And this enemy is lust, Kama, which is born of passion, Raja Guna Samudbhava, because that covers all our intelligence and makes us becoming absorbed in this attachment and aversion. So we must clean the mind from this lust that otherwise we cannot control the mind. And Bhagavad Gita says 6:6, Pandur atmatmanastasya yanatma evatmanachita anatmana tu satrutve vartetatmaiva satruvat. For him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends, but for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. So we must control this mind, we must control these urges and so on. And then we will be able to transcend these modes, to come to goodness, first to goodness. And then we can transcend. So one who has conquered this mind and these urges, what is the result? Chitatmana prasantasma paramatma samaita. Shitoshna shukaduke shutatmana pamanium. For one who has conquered the super soul, the mind, the super soul is already reached, for he has attained tranquility. To such a man, happiness and distress, heat and cold, honor and dishonor are all the same. So this is these dualities which go with the body. He has become aloof from this happiness and distress, this heat and cold, the honor and the dishonor. It becomes all the same. And then when we have attained that stage, then we have to transcend these modes. But we can only transcend these modes by performing devotional service. That's clarified at the end of the 14th chapter. Mamsayo vyabhicharna bhakti yoruna sevate sakudan samatichitam brahma bhuyaya kalpate. So only by pure devotional service can one transcend these modes of material nature. I can transcend them immediately. So the conquering of the mind and the control of all these urges will help us to transcend the modes, but at the same time, it is devotional service that really helps to control the mind and senses. By engaging them in devotional service, we can control the mind and senses. That's the only way. If the mind and senses are not controlled by engaging them in devotional service, they will be engaged in material activities. So that's the message of, finally, of Sri Upadeshamrita, to help us to come to that stage. But preliminary, we must control the mind and senses and not give in to the urges of the mind and senses. Because that it is important to understand that sense gratification, must be restricted. That material life means giving pleasure to the mind and senses. Spiritual life means giving pleasure to the transcendental senses of Krishna. It's a different engagement. And this Shir Upanishad helps us to make this transition from this conditioned state to this transcendental level of ecstatic devotional service. And it explains this in 11 verses, but the first verse is the most important. I hope this helps you more to understand this, the importance of this nectar of instruction and the importance of following this, the advice of Rupa Goswami explained in this first verse. Hare Krishna.